Okay, so this is the Thoracic Outlet Syndrome, TOS, treatment box. It's on Canvas. I think it says TOS treatment box. Pull that up so you can follow along with this. And all these treatment boxes, you need to know most of the material in them. Sometimes there's stuff you don't need to know, but to kind of tell you what you need to know and what you don't need to know for the midterm. If it's grayed in, see how this is all gray? This is telling you this is need to know stuff. Really, all this is need to know. So basically, you need to know all of this for your midterm. And it seems overwhelming, and it is a lot, but it starts to repeat itself. You're doing similar things for a lot of these shoulder related problems. So for TOS, we know about the cause, we know about the symptoms, we just covered that. Let's get into the tests. Two big tests you do for TOS. There is no one definitive test that's going to give you a definite diagnosis with high reliability. So you have to kind of a cluster of tests and do some clinical kind of probing and detective work, palpation, what they're doing, their posture, and kind of usually comes together pretty obviously that this is kind of what's going on. A nice, great tool I think you can use is something called the neural mobility test. There's a YouTube. Use the YouTube videos that I give you, unless they're not working. Let me know if they're not working. For this neural mobility test, we'll do this in the lab. It's a good way to assess and treat at the same time. It's pretty simple. These pictures kind of walk you through it. You're basically having them supine and putting their arm through these different motions as they come further and further up. And what you're doing as it comes further and further up is you're putting more and more of a stretch, more of a strain on that brachial plexus. You try to figure out at what point does it cause the symptoms? At what point is it numbness, tingling, pain? And that's where you stop. So let's say you do that, just that very first one, and it'd be like 0 out of 5. Next one is 1 out of 5. And that's kind of where you're at. And you can do this also as a treatment, kind of progress them and get them higher and higher with these numbers as you work with them in the clinic, and they hopefully get better. So that's the neural mobility test. The yeast or the Roux test. You may have done this one with Carolyn's class, I don't know. Basically what you're doing, and we'll do this one as well, this is one of the tests you definitely need to know for the midterm, have to know well. You need to know all these tests, because you're going to get a person, you're going to figure out what is going on. Is it TOS or is it something else? There's slight variations in this test. People do a little bit differently, but the main gist of it is close your shoulders in closed packed position. This is closed packed position. And it's an important position for the shoulders because it puts them on the biggest, makes them as tight as they possibly can be within that capsule, the shoulder capsule. There's very little room in there for error, so it's a really tight position for the shoulder. And the idea that if it's this tight position, this closed pack position, if there's an issue with the outlet coming down, right through a pec minor, it's going to provoke it. So you do this for up to 3 minutes, see if it causes numbness, tingling, blanching. You can do 10Ls. You may be familiar with 10Ls for carpal tunnel. You can do the tapping anywhere along a nerve path. So you can do right along those 3 spots we talked about, where the plexus goes down. See if that provokes it. Sometimes there's swelling along the clavicle where it's very sore. Posture is a problem with this. Could have some history of neck trauma. COPD, we talked about that, straining the scalenes. So that's how you test for it. How do you treat it? Early on, certain things you can do. You really want to emphasize activity modification. Stop doing what's hurting it, basically. Also early on, you can get them moving. Movement is good. We think of Brenda. She is not moving. She's kind of depressed or distressed and just binging around the clock. Got to get her up and doing, moving, walking, light walking. Recumbent bicycle is good because you're not banging the neck and the plexus. Activity modification, here's some good general rules. Avoid activities that involve 2 hands in front of you. Texting, knitting, keyboarding. Avoid anything over your shoulder. Backpacks, those huge backpacks that you guys haul around or you used to haul around from class to class with all your books in there, Pedretti and all those big heavy things. That can cause TOS, and that may be what was causing some of my students TOS along with all the driving. Heavy bags. A lot of women have these big, huge bags where they have everything in there you can imagine. They're just kind of straining their shoulder all day long with bad posture. But even big jackets, big heavy jackets in the wintertime. Even a bra strap. It may not seem like much, but I've had female clients talk about this. The strap pushing, straining through that plexus can cause problems. Professions that involve ladders and overhead activity. We talked about this a little bit. Painters, drywallers, electricians, mechanics. Think of mechanics. They're underneath the car all day wrenching. Seen a lot of mechanics with shoulder issues. Hairdressers. They have their hands, their arms up, doing stuff, on the hair all the time. A lot of hairdressers come up with TOS and repetitive motion issues. Sleeping. Think about how they sleep. You can help get some good rest and recovery in that shoulder if they can sleep with their shoulders slightly abducted. Maybe use some pillows. The students that I've had that had TOS, the driving, I think I mentioned, was a big thing where their hands are, usually they have terrible posture, their hands are high up on the wheel. Just dropping them down can make a difference. Diaphragmatic breathing, we talked about that. Scaling, stretching, and massaging. Postural exercises. Pectoralis minor stretch. Again, this is a huge little tool. The students that had problems with this, they just did the pectoralis minor stretch and it relieved their symptoms. So do that stretch. We'll learn how to do that stretch in class. It's a simple but very powerful tool. Nerve glides can be helpful. My experience, they're very tricky. Therapists want to be very aggressive with them, and you could really provoke it, make it worse if you're too aggressive right off the bat. So start out. My rule of thumb with nerve glides is start very, very slow and progress very, very slowly. There's some good YouTube videos on different glides. There's different versions of those glides. Basically what you're doing is putting the nerves on stretch. And nerves can be stretched. You can break up those adhesions just like muscles. Can be very helpful. And then as they progress later on, just think of kind of upping the stakes, being more aggressive with everything, getting them back to doing those activities, that sort of stuff. And then down here, below the neuromobility test, is a down and dirty how to treat TOS. I threw so much stuff at you in that box, it kind of condenses it down to something very simple. How do you test for it? Primarily posture, the ruse. Stretches, the posture stretches, especially the pectoralis minor stretch. Scaling massage, activity modification, get them moving, get them breathing through the stomach. Do all those things, you can be successful with that. So that's the